Hey everyone, it's Miss Rose from the LaGrange Park Library here to make some chocolate chip cookies with you. So today we are just going to adapt the recipe that is on the back of the cookie package. So these are dark chocolate, but of course you can use, if dark chocolate is a little too dark for you, you can use semi-sweet. That's typically what's in chocolate chip cookies. So there is a very convenient recipe right on the back, and we are going to just adjust it a little bit. So here is what we're going to use today for our ingredients. We've got 2 1/4 cups of all-purpose flour, and then this recipe calls for nuts, but generally, as you know, at the library we never make anything with nuts, and I actually prefer my chocolate chip cookies just regular without nuts. So we're leaving the nuts out, and the recipe tells us if we're leaving the nuts out to add a tablespoon or 2 of extra flour. So we have done that. So that is 2 1/4 cups plus 1 to 2 tablespoons. Then we have a teaspoon of baking soda. And so today I'm using salted butter, which I will explain when we get to the butter, but because our butter is salted, we don't want to put too much extra salt in. And I actually just learned recently, Morton's salt is actually saltier than other salts, especially this coarse kosher salt. So I'm going to just use a 1/4 teaspoon of that. And then we've got our butter, which we're going to do 1 cup, which is 2 sticks. So this is one of those larger ones that actually makes, it's one big one that makes 2 sticks. Now we accidentally got salted butter, so I meant to get unsalted, but no big deal. Like I said, we'll just adjust the salt. So if that happens and you have salted butter, just adjust the salt. If you have unsalted butter, then you're going to do a teaspoon of salt. And this butter is softened. I've already softened it. So you can do that just by taking it out like an hour before you're going to bake, or putting it in the microwave, but really watching it because you don't want that butter to melt. So you do like 5-10 seconds at a time until it's soft, which is why there's little, it looks like Swiss cheese, because I put my finger in it to make sure it was soft enough. Then you're going to need 3/4 cups of just white granulated sugar and 3/4 cups of packed brown sugar. So now when a recipe calls for brown sugar and it doesn't say light or dark, it usually means light. Again, I thought I had light, I didn't, so I'm using dark. It's totally fine. I actually think it's going to make the cookies taste quite delicious. And when they say packed, what that means is you don't just want to pour the sugar in until you get to the 3/4 line. You want to push it down because there's tons of air in between, and actually you can see down there's even a little bit, but it's a little over the 3/4 line, so we should be okay. Then we're also going to need a teaspoon of vanilla extract. Okay, so we've got 2 eggs that I've already cracked. You see them in there. Those are going to be added one at a time. Which is, it's okay to put them together. You just have to very gently pour. And you just want to be careful when you're cracking eggs. You want to crack them on a flat surface, not on the edge of the bowl, because what happens when you crack them on the edge of the bowl is that shell goes inside the egg. If you crack them flat, it'll stay outside. Another disclaimer, because there are raw eggs in this dough, you just want to be careful. I know cookie dough is like the most delicious thing, but you don't really want to be eating raw eggs. So it's okay to taste like a very small amount. If your grown-up says it's okay, but you don't want to be eating handfuls of raw cookie dough because you could get very sick. So, and of course, the most important ingredient are chocolate chips, or morsels as they are called here. I also like to use chocolate chunks sometimes too. One thing that is interesting to take a look at your chocolate. So this chocolate, this is a little bit newer. Got this pretty recently, so you can see it's like a nice dark color. I have some chocolate chunks here too, and you notice there's like a white film on them. That is called bloom, B-L-O-O-M. And what happens is generally when the chocolate changes temperature, either the fat in the chocolate or the moisture gets on the outside of it, when those things change, that creates this bloom. It doesn't mean the chocolate's bad. It may be a little bit drier, but it's easily remedied by melting it. So if we did want to use the chunks today, we could do that too, but I'm just going to use these delicious looking morsels. Okay, so just try to get those back in there. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is chocolate everywhere. First thing we need to do is the first thing we need to do is wash our hands, which I have already done. So if you have not done that, pause me, come back, hands washed. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take our flour, and then we're going to add our baking soda and our salt and just mix those together. So remember, a teaspoon of baking soda into our 2 1/4 cups plus a tablespoon or 2 of flour. And then remember, I'm adjusting the salt. You want to be careful if you're pouring over that you don't get, I'm actually going to do this over the sink because we don't want too much extra salt. So if you're ever pouring anything over, there we go. Okay. So there's our salt. And then I'm just going to take a fork. You can use a whisk too and just mix those up so they're just lightly incorporated and kind of spread out. And when that's done, we're just going to set it to the side. And we are going to then beat our butter and sugar together. So we are going to add the sugars, both of them. Just make sure I'm doing this right. Oh, and the thing that you want to do first also is preheat your oven to 375. Yes, all the sugars and the vanilla extract and the butter. So I'm just going to throw everything in there. You'll see you'll need to break that up a little with your mixer. And then we're doing a teaspoon of vanilla, which I'm going to actually add once we get the sugars kind of mixed into the butter. So I'm just using a hand mixer. You can use this. One thing, be super careful. You don't want to put, so like these come out, actually here, these come out. And so when you put them in, you want to make sure this isn't plugged in. I've done that before and my fingers get caught in it when it starts to spin. That is not fun. So you just want to make sure you're putting these in and taking them out when your hand mixer is unplugged. You can also use a stand mixer if that's something that you have at home. You just want to be careful with those that you don't over beat your dough because then it gets really tough. So I am going to beat these together and then I'll be back in a second to show you what it looks like. Okay, so we beat our sugars, our butter, and I added that vanilla until creamy. So you can see it's kind of, sorry, let's try that. There we go. Till creamy. So it's very nicely smooth. And then we just want to scrape down the sides to make sure we're getting everything in there. You can use a nice rubber spatula for that. And then I always like to use a butter knife on my rubber spatula to help get that extra off of there. So now we are going to add the eggs one at a time, and we're going to beat each one well after adding them. So I'm going to do that, and then I'll be back to show you what it looks like after that. Okay, so we are back. It doesn't look much different, maybe a little glossier. That first time that you beat the eggs and the sugars and the vanilla, it's going to take you maybe about 5 minutes, and it depends on the speed you're using. You know, if you're going at a slower speed, 5 minutes for sure, stopping to check and scrape down the sides. If you're going to go at a higher speed, it take like 3-4 minutes. So the next thing we're going to do is we are going to add our flour mixture, but we're going to do it gradually. So I usually just like to take a measuring cup and then add a little bit, spread it around. So this is a 1/4 cup, so maybe I'll do 2, so I'll start with 1/2 cup and then go from there. So I'm gonna add this in, and then when we're done adding all the flour, I'll show you what it looks like. Usually it'll probably take about 4 turns to add it all. All right, I'll be back. Okay, we're back. We've added all the flour, and that's what it looks like. So you feel how heavy it is. The consistency is definitely stiffer, but still, you know, not too heavy. Still feels a little fluffy. Now we get to add the chocolate chips. And what's easy about this is that we're just using a whole package, so we don't have to measure it out. I may have tasted 1 or 2 just to make sure it was okay. You know, that's fine. But and so this, we don't want to beat these in because if we use the mixer, it will just break up the chocolate. We don't want that to happen. So we're just going to use a regular old wooden spoon just to get those nice and incorporated. All right. And then one thing that you'd like to do, so this calls to place them on an ungreased cookie sheet. I like to use parchment paper because it keeps your cookie sheet nice and clean, but also helps just to make sure nothing sticks, just in case. These cookies probably wouldn't stick, but if you have parchment, it's just a nice little touch to make it easier for you to clean up at the end. So we're almost all set here with our chocolate chips. And if you have an ice cream scooper, I like to use that to make the cookies, I guess. You don't have to. You can use a regular spoon, or 2 spoons sometimes helps, because this, you know, is so sticky. So it helps to use the ice cream scooper that has this fun little thing on the inside that makes stuff fall out of it. So, all right. So we're ready. Our stuff's incorporated. I'm going to put them out on the cookie sheet. I'll show you what they look like before we start baking them. And then we'll put them in the oven. And we're only going to put them in the oven for about 9 to 12 minutes. You kind of just have to watch them. Depends on your oven, right? And how crispy or dark colored you like your cookies. Okay, I'll be back. Okay, so my cookies are out on the cookie sheet. And I have like a giant one. You might need to use 2. And they are ready to be baked. One thing this recipe doesn't mention is how far apart you should place your cookies. I have a feeling these are gonna kind of run together, but that's okay. And if you wanted to, of course, space them out more so that their edges don't run together, you can definitely do that. I actually switched from using the ice cream scooper to just doing a rounded tablespoon, which you take 2 spoons and just kind of and then plop it down. The ice cream scooper was a little too big. It was giving me dough that was a little too big for what we want. All right, so I'm going to bake these, and then I'll come back and show you what they look like. One cool thing this recipe says, if you want salted chocolate chip cookies, you could add coarse or flaky sea salt. Once they've been in there for 7 minutes, pull them out, add the salt, and then return to the oven for the rest of the baking time. So I might do that with a few of them, probably not with all of them. But all right, we'll be back. Okay, we're back. I will tell you the cookies definitely ran together, so we'll have some funky edges where we break them off, but it doesn't matter what they look like, right? They still taste really good. So what you're gonna do when these come out of the oven is you're gonna cool them on the pan for 2 minutes, and then you're gonna transfer them to some wire racks like I have right here. And then just let them finish cooling there. And I left mine in a little bit longer than I said. I like a more crispy cookie. So I think total time for mine was about 15 minutes, but just keep an eye on them and enjoy your cookies.